Hey Mats, welcome to the guild.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thanks for that amazing introduction.
Oh, awesome to have you. Really excited. Before we get into Mats, anything you want to share with the guild before you jump into your session?
Well, artificial intelligence, I guess that was a long time ago, so I
Yeah.
don't know if I still have the stripes. A lot has happened in that field, but no, but thank you anyways.
Well, I'm sure you sub the foundations, and that's where everything's built on. So, perfect person to talk
Exactly.
about. Yeah.
Back then we had to build it by ourselves, right, from
Wow.
scratch. Now you can go in and use pre-existing stuff, which is cool. So
Yeah.
you can do much more right now.
Absolutely. So, Mats, just curious to know, what are your thoughts on AI with automation testing? Is that a real thing based on your
Yeah,
background?
well, it's a real thing, but we take a little bit of a different approach. Some people they go in and say AI, and they might be moving around and working with element selectors and stuff like that. We tend to try to work on a dictionary level, so like one level up. So like close to the technology, we want to have as good representation to understand the test, and then we try to use AI a few levels up, while you can go very close to the technology and use AI to muddle around with selectors and stuff. That's one approach. It has some pros, it has some cons. We prefer to try to solve like really big problems for a long term, and then we want to work at a slightly higher level. So I think that if I want to sum it up, that's what we believe in.
Sounds awesome. So, Mats, the town hall floor is yours. So, uh, any session or any slides that you want to share, or just jump right into it with your presentation.
Yeah, very cool. Well, very often I don't do slides and I just
Oh,
talk and
good,
talk,
perfect.
but I'm not going to do that today.
Very
So
good.
this time I actually prepped a few slides, and I think it may
Cool.
be better because I'll just do a few slides, like 5-10 minutes,
Sure.
and then I'll jump straight into the demo, just to see if that format works. So I want to try it here today and
Absolutely.
have like it's just a couple of slides. I'm just going to try and share and see if
Cool.
this works out.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's see.
And Guild,
So
as I mentioned, anytime you hear Matt's talk and you have a question, just type it in so I make sure I get to ask him live. So you can use the questions feature within the town hall if you're there, or if you're on YouTube, just leave it in the comments below. And Matt, I can
and
see your
Joe,
screen.
you can see my screen now. There's a mountain, right?
There is.
Very cool. So, Joe, I guess if there are questions, you just tell me, right? And you interrupt
Exactly.
me. And so I'd be very happy for questions all along, because sometimes I go really fast, or there is something that is important right now you want to know. And then sometimes you will lose the context, right? So just
Yes.
type the question in, and I'll make sure to address it.
Awesome.
So I'm guessing now you see the slides on your screen, right?
Yes.
So this is our logo man. He's not our official logo, but he shows up a lot. And what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about codeless test automation using Boozang. And I just want to start out here to say that codeless is a misunderstood term, because you also have this no code movement. I think our definition when we say codeless is the fact that we believe there's a lot you can do without code, but then it's good when you want to solve some problem which is not easily solved, and you know how to solve it with code. You can go in and kind of inject the code that solves the problem and allows you to move forward without being stuck, being like, where is this function in the user interface? So I think that's the where we say codeless, and what we mean about that instead of no code. No code would be maybe a platform like Squarespace or something like that, where you have like a website creator, while a codeless platform could be something more that, like, I don't want to use an example from the past here, but WordPress, you use some plugins, you do some stuff, but then you can also use code and inject it and get around the problem. So I think that's where we are operating, in that kind of idea. Solve 95% of your problems without code, and where you need code, inject it. Does that make sense? Very
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the agenda today is just going to talk about where I come from, talk really quickly about Boozang, our technology, which is just basically a few slides. And then that's about 5-10 minutes. And then I'll spend the rest of the time doing a demo, talking about 3 different things that we're doing, we think especially well, and also kind of what we've been doing the last year. So that would be in the interim since we talked, Joe. So there's a few things that happened since then. So, and then we'll end with the questions. So this is me here. I guess you see me on video too. So this is like maybe a year ago, but it's been quarantine here for a bit now. So at least I got a haircut. So it's good for this presentation. I'm from Sweden originally, living in Canada, and I was working for a company. They said they invented the mobile internet. That's not true, but they were working with all these telecom operators that wanted to get people on the internet really early when there was like a walled garden. And then that company got sold to a big telecom company, was Ericsson. So I was basically traveling Latin America, working with all different operators. I have a few stints in China, and then I finally ended up in Canada. So my job was basically I would go to the telecom operator and I would deliver the project and the software at the customer site. So I would work with the customer. So I was basically only 5% in my home office, always working with the end customer. So of course, when you're running acceptance tests, you start understanding like, what are they looking for? What needs to be the gate to get like a sign-off, to get an acceptance sign-off, to get the money, and then to hand it over to support. So I was kind of working in there, not so much on the software development part, more on the kind of delivery and fulfillment and handover. So that's where I come in. And then, of course, you work with the product unit, you work with the people building the software, and you take those requirements back and you try to get them be more aware of what the customer actually wants and what they need. 4 years ago, co-founded Boozang, which is basically test automation in the browser. And all this stemmed from the fact, not just that, we thought there was a better way to do test automation. It was also my co-founder had a series of inventions, basically, that we built our technology on top of. So it was a little bit the similar realization that the Cypress technology came to. So our technology is actually on the low level more similar to Cypress than to Selenium, except that we're completely built in JavaScript and completely hosted in the cloud. I think that's the biggest difference there. So if you want to think about us, we're basically more like a JavaScript, Cypress type of platform, but hosted in the cloud and more of an end-to-end platform. Right now, I'm actually using our product to do test automation from a scale-up company here in Montreal. So actually every day I use Boozang to do the full test coverage for another company. So we've also been able to kind of iterate on our technology. So we're just not like building product, we're actually using it in production right now and in that pipeline, right? So this is Boozang Technologies based in Montreal, founded 4 years ago. And of course, gotta mention Wensheng Li, who is the guy who has all the inventions. He basically does most of the core development for the product. He has a very, very good philosophy when it comes to test automation. We've been in market with paying customers for 3 years, and we have customers in North America, Europe, and China. We just actually set up, not because we're still like a fairly small scale company, but we still set up hosting in Europe. So we don't have any latency problems there right now. And in China, we have an on-premise install. So it's installed in a government, like a customer there in China. So there also we can avoid those latency issues coming from the cloud. The basic premise is, right, low code, we believe, is better than Selenium. We believe we can do anything with our platform that you can do with Selenium. And of course, the gain would be like 3 basic pillars. You speed up the test creation, you get much less test maintenance, and that's what the most of the criticisms I've seen with people working with a bigger test automation stack based on Selenium, that you get a lot of test maintenance. So I think that's what we cut out a lot. And also, of course, we activate non-technical team members. It doesn't mean that if you don't know programming, that you can do everything with the platform. What it means is that you can have the business analysts or product owners that can do a large part of the test automation. And then you might have one test automation expert, you do 90% of the work, and then you'd be like, but how do I do this? And then they can go to that person, get that done. So like the productivity, if you have business analysts or product owners or something, or even QAs that are used to doing manual testing, they can take a much bigger part of the automation effort, and you can get much more out of your team and much better utilization, instead of pulling on developers all the time that are competing with building automation code or building features, right? So I think that's the main idea, and very similar to a lot of other tools that are also in the market, low code, trying to come in and make this claim, right? So now I'm going to talk also a little bit why we're different. Well, what we believe in, right, is that we do the test automation technology. We'll do the test automation, but then we kind of leave you to use your existing test stack, right? So we don't necessarily do test management. We don't necessarily provide you with the CI. We allow you to use your existing tools like Jira or GitHub, or running your Cucumber files, and then we just provide the glue, which is test automation. So that allows us to be super focused on the web testing and kind of leave the other stuff to the other tools. So keep your existing tools, that are our motto. So also then we who are really interested in technology, we don't have to work too much on like project management tools and all that other bigger ecosystem that we quite frankly think is a little bit boring. More fun to focus on test automation, on technology, and kind of delivering really stable and cool tests. So again, what we do well, really quickly, we're testing in the web browser, not outside the web browser. We do functional regression and end-to-end test. And just a little note on the end-to-end test, we support canvas testing since 1 month. So we can do tests inside the HTML canvas, which I think we are the only tool on the market that does right now, to be able to look inside the canvas element. We're based on behavior-driven development. We're doing Cucumber, and we've added API testing, and the power of doing API testing with our tool, even if this is fairly new, we had it like 6 months in the market. The key is that you can mix API and UI tests. So you can do like, maybe you can create the project on the UI, but you can only delete it over the API. You can still do a full CRUD test. You could also generate API tests directly from UI tests. So you record a UI test and it can automatically, we time and we check all the API requests. So we can automatically generate API tests from UI tests, which is also really powerful. We have the basic performance testing. We time all requests going out from the web browser. So we get all the times going out and in. And we also do some load testing. So what don't we do? We don't do unit testing. It's still important that you do unit testing of the code. Of course, when you have end-to-end test automation, there's much more stuff you can kind of skip when it comes to unit testing, and you can probably lay it off a little bit. But the idea would be that the developers are still responsible for doing their unit testing. And then you'll make sure that as the product gets delivered into staging, into your QA environment, to make sure that that glue, that all the stuff is working together. So this is more like end-to-end or acceptance testing, right? We don't really do test management. There are many good tools to do that. So we leave that to those tools. Also, we don't or are interested in doing desktop testing. There are legacy tools that does this. We are only working in the web browser. Also, we are not focused on native mobile. We believe that a hybrid model, a web browser mobile, is the future, and we're interested in browser testing, so we're also completely skipping native testing on the mobile side. So why do behavior-driven development? I'm just going to do this really, really quickly. There is, of course, reasons for running Cucumber and BDD, and there is, of course, many people who can speak to this more better than me, and I can actually make a link at the end. Why do you do the Cucumber direction? But of course, one thing I can mention is actually that we notice that the test become better when you do Cucumber, meaning the way you break down the test makes the test better. And I'm going to come back to that when I do the demo, and you're going to be able to see why maybe. And then why Cucumber? Well, for us, it was great, right? We just supported Cucumber since November last year. And this is probably the best decision we've ever done, because not only is it really established, right? We can use existing plugins in Jenkins, reporting plugins, and also other tools that we can integrate with that already support Cucumber. So this is one of the keys. And of course, an existing customer who's running Selenium and Cucumber, they can basically just press one button, synchronize with us, and they get all that test skeleton already in our tool, and then they just can start, already running using our tool. So of course, from a sales perspective, it makes a lot of sense for us. So now I'm just going to do a demo, and what I'm going to focus on is our own selectors, the natural language selectors. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do data binding, and then about our Cucumber support. So I'm just going to launch the tool here. So I still think I'm on schedule. And Joe, you let me know if there's any questions so far. This was just the intro. So
yeah, absolutely. Just people are really surprised all that it handles. It's really evolved in the past year and a half since the last time we talked.
Yeah, it's like this. One thing that helps for us is probably the first 2 years, we built all the technology from the beginning. We built our own JavaScript framework. We built a whole new system of selectors. So when you do that, it's kind of like a mountain, right? So you don't get a lot of value early on. So you go basically 2 years with not a lot of functionality, and you work and you work and you work, and it's kind of crazy. It's not the typical kind of startup way, Yep. But then when you have all the technology in place, you have full control over what you built, then it's very fast to build features and to add features on the platform. So I think that's the reason why you see a fast evolution now.
Very cool. And Matt, just a quick question from Michelle on YouTube. She wanted to know, since you are using BDD, what programming language are you using in the background?
Oh, so what it is basically this. We take just regular Cucumber files that are just feature files with scenarios. Then we just synchronize them into Boozang, and then we map them directly to our JavaScript tests. So you're going to see that it's basically just, the BDD kind of just tells you what are the test steps, and then you run it in Boozang, process it. And then it comes back as failed and whatever, and then we write back the Cucumber reports, and those can be handled by Jenkins or by X-Ray in Jira. So it's like almost like it's code in one side using Cucumber and maybe some other system, and then it hands over to Boozang, runs the tests, and gets the results back. So you start and you end usually outside Boozang. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And so some quick comments. Gianni says he's been using Boozang for a while and he loves it. He loves your clear focus on using Cucumber, and also it integrates with REST, with Jira and all the rest. So really enjoys that. Also, a lot of people are really excited about the API functionality. They want to say when you do your demo, hopefully you have something about API testing, that feature as well in the demo.
Yeah, what I can do is I can show how it would look, and then I can be like, this we would have to do a demo of, because it's a big thing. It's another 40 minutes probably to go into that. But what I'll do is I'll show how it would work. Cool. And then we'll save it for a different time, but I'll show a little bit.
Perfect.
So you see my screen. The way it works is this: you'll have your browser, right? And you go to ai.boozang.com. Here you can sign up for free. We only limit the amount of actions you can run. We don't really limit the time. So you have a free tier, so you can take any time to run Boozang, try it out, and see if it's right for you. And a lot of people do that. Some people are quick and they go and they want to have go ahead and have like a commercial thing with Boozang. Some people, they just want to play around with it for a long time to see if it's a fit. So you can basically just go here, sign up. But what I'll do now is I'm going to use the lab here to demo this. And I'm not going to use the full screen. So the fun thing is this, right? You launch it in the browser, right? So it's in the browser window, but because this browser window is running locally on your computer, we are not accessing your site from the cloud, right? So you can work behind a firewall or anything. There's nothing, you don't have to be like on an open connection to the internet, right? So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to use the lab that we built just to do some demos. And of course, we could use any site, but the reason is that it's very easy to illustrate some very, very key functionality that we have. So I'm going to do that. Here we have some AI authorization that allows you to automate login, logout. We're going to skip that for now because that's a separate session. And we're just going to go back on the main view. One thing I can tell you is, I don't know if you remember, Joe, the UI we had last time. We've redone the UI 4 times in total, and this is the last iteration. And we couldn't find our way to build the right kind of UI because we were always looking at other web platforms, and we were a very advanced tool, so you can never fit it into a web interface. And then we had this very good idea, and we also got feedback from our customers. Like, oh, we want tabs, we want this. So what we did was, instead of basing it on a web interface, we based it on a desktop IDE. So now actually, if you look at our tool, the navigation and everything, it's much more like Visual Studio Code. So you have a top navigation here with different tabs. So you can work on different tests. And then when you want to troubleshoot or debug a specific test, you also have tabs in here, which you can kind of expand. And so it's much more like not a web interface. It's much more like a desktop interface in the web. And that's one thing that I think we really, 4th time the charm, we really hit home eventually with this.
Yeah, I love it. It's a lot better from the UX perspective for sure.
Yeah, we knew we had a weakness there before. Like, it was pretty obvious, but it's the hardest thing to do. Like, it's like so many times, like you try and you try, but if you don't really know UI well, it's really difficult. And I think what we figured out with our customers also being highly involved was the fact that if you do it more like an IDE, it will also, the developers will also really like it. So I think that's the key also. So the whole thing is module based. The idea is, of course, that you don't put like just a lot of tests and they're all, end to end, long stories, hundreds of actions. The idea is you create modules that are based on the code. You create, add, delete, edit, validate, separated. You create data-driven tests with a lot of reusability. And this is key with this tool, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can't map it to Cucumber if you don't work that way. So this is key. But what I'm going to talk about first is our selectors. So I'm just going to create a module called selectors. Of course, it's a little bit, it's not what you would call it. And I'm just going to call it the click button, whatever, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm looking to, I think this page, which I want to demo on, is called Scramble. And this is, if you want to try this site out, this is all part of a Udemy course I'm doing, and it's called thelab.boozang.com. So you can play around with the tool. There's a lot of exercises there. But right now, I'm just going to show you how our selectors is working. So we wrote our own selector language, and it's one very, very important distinction with what we do. And it's the fact that we look at the language which we're clicking. We don't look at the class, we don't look at the ID, we don't look at other attributes. We only use those as fallbacks. And why this is really important is that when you do that with AI, longer term, you can do a lot of things. For instance, imagine you create project A and project B. When I click project B, then this should happen, right? This thing, in order to do that, it's very important that the selector contains the name project B. Otherwise, if it's class project, it will click on project A, so you won't be able to do complex data-driven tests. So this is one of the things that we do very differently. So if we look at it, if I click on a button here, let's say I click on the lion button, and let's say I scramble it and I click on the lion button, of course, it will just record click on button, click on button. But if you see the selector, it actually says lion. So if I run it, of course, it will be able to click on the button. But the cool thing is the current automation I'm doing, all the IDs are dynamic, all the classes are dynamic. We can't trust that at all. It has no problem doing automation using our tool because we're looking at the actual label. So if I scramble the ID and I scramble the class and I scramble the order and I run it again, it's no problem. So now you're thinking, okay, but what happens now when you change the content, when the content of something changes? Okay, this is a problem. Of course, we won't be able to find this button now. Now this is Puma. So let's try it. Let's see what happens. Okay, it says, oh, it wasn't found. Okay, what do we do? Okay, I'm just going to retry and repick this element from the user interface. And then I'm going to do upgrades. I'm upgrading the element path. So what you're going to see is that this is, of course, okay, you will have to make sure that it's working. But because now I can now tie that item in the dictionary to the new item. So you saw when it couldn't find that item, it automatically upgraded the element path. So this is key when you have something, when you have, for instance, create project, right? We can start understanding that create project creates a module project. When you have delete project, we can start understanding that delete deletes the project. When you have remove, we can understand that delete and remove are the same things. So this is what you can do when you have a natural language approach. And also because classes and the hierarchy in the DOM tree can change a lot. When you use the language like this, you get really, really stable tests without having to automatically do a lot of stuff with the DOM tree, with the selectors. So our selection language works really well. And it's really good when you have more data-driven applications. When I create this, then I want to click on this, then I want to do a validation. And I'm going to show that next, okay? What we can do there. So I'm going to create something around forms. So let's call this form. And this is validate or form validation, I believe. Fill form. So we're creating a project which fills a form here. Let's see here if I'm on the right page. So we worked a lot on working on handling data, doing data binding, and also being able to send data between different tests to really, really encourage reusability. So let's look at some form fill, right? The naive way of doing it would be just typing and recording into something here. So this would be my name. But what you can see here instantly is, of course, that we can bind this into variables. So if I just fill it like this, I can basically just click on this and just continue filling the form. And what you will see here is that you have a parameter which has the first name filled. So now, of course, we have already a data-driven test without me doing anything, basically, just filling a form. But there is even more we can do here. We could, for instance, do this. We can hit record, and we can basically autofill a whole form, and it's going to automatically populate the what do you call that? The form. So it didn't find very good names here for it, like form, not a number, whatever is that. It's because we're trying to match these labels to regular expressions. That's why we know the email is already an email, right? So we try the best we can. But of course, what we can do here is that we can take something like this and say Ljunggren. I changed the name here directly in the variables, and we can look at the key value editor, and I can just fill this. For some reason, it didn't manage to get all the fields. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add for the username and for the password. So now I'm putting username. Let's put it in the same format, username, and we put Ljunggren like that, and we'll add password here. So now we have first name, last name, email, username, password, and I'll just fill something in here, okay? So now if I want to fill this in, I can actually, if I clear this, this form, I can just reload this. It would clear the form. Now I can be able to also fill these forms based on what I have here. So if I click here, I can double click. I should be able to have this filled already. So I'll stop the recording. I'll double click here. And for some reason, there, it fills the form. And now I can record the outstanding steps. So basically here, I would use the username, and I would use the password. So this is still has a little bit of problems, but as you can see, now we have already created a data-driven test case. So let's see here. So the point I think that we're trying to make is that if you can make data-driven test cases really, really quickly, you can see that now you have something that you can reuse in many, many cases, and then you can use that for upstream test cases. So I still think this went a little bit bad, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna redo this one because it's always tricky with live demos. So what I'm going to try and do now is I'm going to try and just define the parameter and see if I can autofill this with the information I have, okay? So we're going to see here, email, let's see. Autofill. Let's see if we manage to autofill the form with the data we have. No, some small bug here on this demo. I think this is the way it goes when you demo. But anyways, the idea is that you can do really quickly doing data-driven tests, and normally you have this working really well, and it's really good to be able to get results really quickly. So I think that's the purpose of this. Then the best thing that we've done, I think, on since November was that we've provided Cucumber support, right? So this is the key differentiator now that we have built in Cucumber support. So what we do is we allow you to synchronize with the Cucumber feature files on Git, for instance, right? So I've created a file here. Let's see here. So I basically created a feature file. I pushed it to GitHub. So I'm not going to go into Cucumber now, but if you go in and you look at the feature file here, what we do is I use a lot of tags, basically saying form fill. And if you're not familiar with Cucumber, you can look into it. But the idea is that it's just basically human readable tests. So basically a scenario could be like validate a filled form, and basically given I have an empty form, when I fill out some info, the result should have that info. And you can also have data-driven Cucumber tests where you have some explicit info and you validate it. So here I have a generic test case and a data-driven test case. But in order to demo this, I'm going to have to just make sure that this form fill test works. So I'm just going to record it manually now and not use the fancy, I'm just going to do this, do a new here. Fill form 2. And I'll do here, form validation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in the form manually now instead of using auto binding. Doing test. Ljunggren. Mats Ljunggren. I'll submit this. So now you see we have some stuff that has the parameters and some stuff that has hard-coded values. So if I want to fix this, I can basically just do this. I can add the first name here. Do this. So now we have a data-driven test. So let's see that this works. So what we want to do now, we want to use this as a component of a data-driven test. So we also want to create a validation. So we want to do validate filled form. So what I'm going to use now is I'm going to use the variables from the other test to make sure we have a validation here. So I'm going into the parameter. Let's see here, not validate here. Fill form 2. I copy this and then I go into validate fill form. And I record this one. So one of the good things is when you have broken out variables and you know what the values are, that when you make a validation, so here I'm going to do a data validation. So this one will automatically, if everything works as expected, it's going to automatically capture all those variables. So of course you could go in and do a validation and try and capture these that dynamic data. But what you can see here, because we've already captured it, it already knows that it's looking for parameter first name, last name, and email inside of this box. So this is like a wildcard validation where it automatically takes a set of data. So as you can see now it's very quickly to see that if it's correct, you get a green dot because it has all that data inside that box, right? So we're going to create a very simple, just init test or something, and we're just going to leave this blank, because in Cucumber you always have a given condition, okay? And now we're going to use Boozang as a slave system for that feature. So we're going to go back out, simply synchronize with GitHub for the feature files. So here, Boozang works as a slave system for the features. So we're going to go here, load features from VCS. I pick GitHub, and then I just put in my account info here. So in GitHub, if you have a private repository, you need to make a token for Boozang to synchronize it, okay? And we also support branches. So you specify the master branch and we'll synchronize this, okay? So we hope everything works now. We'll do the check, and you see it gets the form fill feature from GitHub. So now I can basically just go here and synchronize. So the way I would do it here is just basically do import feature, synchronize, and it will tell me which are the new features it got from GitHub. So here, the good stuff is this, that I can now take, let's take the generic form fill, right? And I can just, it just tells me this has not been implemented yet. So imagine you have your team running with doing all the automation glue. And then you have a team of business analysts that push features in the system. You can still have these people working fairly independent, and you see this has not been implemented. So now if I want to just match these two together, I can do basically here, this is my init test. This is my, my fill form that works. And then this is my validate data. So now I have created already a data-driven test using Cucumber. So that's the idea, right? That you can spend 5 minutes, create a simple data-driven test, and then you can actually, when you get to the, then you can use these puzzle pieces to build more and more complex tests. So that's the idea. So I'm just going to wrap up here. We're just showing how you would use the data-driven test to just override the parameter. So now, I hope it's not too confusing, but I'll show you here, see if this is. So here you see we have a problem with the validation. This is because I forgot to set, this should never reload the page, okay? So now we'll do it again, otherwise it just goes back to the main page.
Mats, are you able to choose different browsers also when you run?
Yeah, so the way we did it before, okay, it was like this. We used to say, oh, never, we support both snippet and extensions, but now when the Edge is also going and the Brave browser is also going on the Chromium engine, we actually kind of recommend that people go with the extension and then use the Puppeteer, our Docker library based on Puppeteer to do the headless browsing, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like, so we do basically most things now using the Chromium engine. We still support other browsers, but I think our focus is that everything is going Chromium now, and that's the trend. So I think that's where we are right now.
Great.
One thing, of course, when you do all this and you do data-driven tests, like for instance, if I want to go back and just implement the data-driven version of this test, I will just match the ones I already have, and then I will just match these ones, and it will actually send that data downstream. So it's really, really quick to do a good data-driven test. And we do recommend people to use a lot of data-driven tests, even with Cucumber, because it can be very, very powerful. So it's really quick. Sometimes you got to make sure, like I did now, we had some problems. I did it manually, but it's still really, really quick, of course, to do these tests compared to Selenium. So it's really quick to get a base of data-driven tests that can do a lot of things, very versatile tests. So you'd be surprised how much you can do with like 20 well-written small tests. They can do a lot of automation, right? Because I can reuse them using Cucumber. So I'm just going to show you on the report side what it looks like when you've done a lot of these tests. Maybe you spend a month of doing automation work. When you spend a month doing automation work, when you build Cucumber test, what kind of dashboard you're looking at. So I'm just going to show that really, really quickly from my Jenkins. Just going to let this run. So in the end, it will look something like this. So I'll show you. So I run Jenkins for many different projects. So when you if I look here, for instance, at my pipes. So the way I run my tests right now is I do some health check. I have like a simple test to check that the environment is up. And then I do some cleanups. Then I seed some test data. And then I do a whole lot of regression tests here. And if you look into what this would look like on the Cucumber report side, you basically get these beautiful dashboards that just gives you everything like this. So you'll see all the scenarios and all the steps that failed. And then if you want to see what happens when you have a problem, I will just go back here. Let's say, let's pick one that didn't go well. Let's pick number 66. And we look at Cucumber reports. And if you go here on shipment orders, you'll get this basically a screenshot that shows you what's going wrong, okay? So this is what's really powerful. You have a lot of tests, but you get these really good dashboards that where you get basically the error pointed out with the screenshot, which is basically the Cucumber report. So we didn't build this. This is just part of Cucumber reporting. So I think I'm already a little long now, so I think I should wrap it up for questions. What do you think, Joe? I had some problems with the demo there, but it's always like that when you're doing live demos.
That is fine. Yeah, if you could just switch to your camera view, or actually 1 second, because I don't know if someone wants to see this. You know, API testing, it was a big question. So does it test REST API? And because you're able to write JSON in the recorder, that's how you're able to do API testing, I'm just guessing?
Yeah. So the way we do it is this. If I would go in here and I'm looking at any file, I have my file with all the functional details in the testing. We could also go in and just see if I can just do this. What you can also see is all the requests and responses going in and out from the application, because we're listening on the browser. So we saw all the requests and responses going out, but we also know all the variables that we have set. So now if it's a REST request going out, we can basically just record those REST requests. So you'll go in here, you'll run a test, and instead of running play here, you do generate API. This one will take and listen to all the API calls going to the REST from the browser. It will take those and it will substitute all the data. For instance, if I use a first name here, it will put parameter first name. So that way we can create a data-driven API test from a data-driven end-to-end test. So that's basically the key. You'll have a play mode here where you do generate API and it automatically generates the API. That's a good question. The way we do it is this. More and more we see that people running slave instances on Jenkins. So basically you have a Jenkins or a CI server and you have a number of slaves. So what we wanted to do, instead of just doing everything in our tool, we wanted to make sure that we would support parallel testing. So the way I did it, I actually hacked it. But it's not a bad hack. It sounds bad, but it's really, really effective. The way we do it is basically, if I show you here, I can show you in Cucumber. I'm going to show you. Show you here. The way we do it is basically we use tags and you get all the scenarios that belong to a certain tag. And then I ask in Jenkins how many parallel workers should run this step, okay? And then I take all the scenarios from a specific tag and I basically just branch it on the, so this is a little technical, but I basically branch it on the Docker side. So I'll start a Docker container on the slave just with take these scenarios. So basically I get a list of scenarios like this, 20 scenarios. And then I ask how many workers and I just give them. And as soon as they're done, they come back and say, now I want the next scenario. So then they get the next scenario and they start executing, right? Then I merge the Cucumber files in the end. And then you get all the files in the same dashboard. You don't have different things. So it's all in one. So that's how we handle that. So we handle that actually outside Boozang.
Great. So another question is this just a on-premise solution? I mean, is this just a SaaS solution? Do you have an on-prem implementation?
So we have an on-premise install in China because of you're not allowed to host things in China without a registered company, and we don't have an officially registered company. Oh. So instead we have an on-premise install in China. So what we did was, because we wrote our own JavaScript framework, we're basically able to encrypt the whole stack. So we can do on-premise installs of our cloud solution without being worried about IP. So that's one of the things we do.
Nice. What level of customization or scope is available in Boozang? This is from Vivek.
I would say the level of customization is not huge. What we rely on is a lot of the external systems. So of course, with Cucumber, you have to follow the spec of Cucumber, okay? That's one thing. You can't go outside of that. When it comes to reports and all that, because our test runner is open source, writing reports and doing your own integration and all that is very easy, because the test runner, let's say it runs in Jenkins or another CI server, you can do whatever you want with that. So you can reformat reports and post it to external systems, etc. When it comes to inside the test, the biggest customization is basically just doing, hey, I'm putting JavaScript here and now I'll just write whatever I want here. So it's basically just doing JavaScript directly in the browser. Of course, there's a lot you can do there, right? Validate, complex validations and this and that is very, very powerful, right? So sometimes you have to do them, and you do them just by writing JavaScript directly in the tool.
That answers one of the next questions from Amit. He wants to know, if I want to add code, which programming language can I use? Sounds like
only
JavaScript.
Okay. Only what the browser understands. We're like inside the browser, so whatever the browser understands, you can use. But if the browser doesn't understand it, but I think people need to get better at that too. It's like a lot of people troubleshoot and they're in the browser and they don't realize there's a lot of the troubleshoot you can do from the Chrome console.
Yeah.
So we just take that to the next step where you can automate and put all those things inside, just running it in the Chrome console, and you'd be surprised how much stuff, Chrome is making available for us now to do.
Nice. So someone tests Salesforce applications and they want to know, does this handle shadow DOMs or nested iframes?
We handled shadow DOMs for a little more than 1 year. So we had a customer who was doing tests on shadow DOMs. We implemented it, it was working, and then we didn't hear any more because I think they canceled that project. So I can tell you, we support it, we officially support it. I don't have an active project right now running shadow DOMs that I can test on. I have a little test and it works, but we don't have an active customer running it, but we support it. And if you find a bug, it's a bug, you can report it and we'll fix it.
Great. Okay. So I think we probably need to get you back about API testing because a lot of people have asked that. Michelle mentioned something about, I just used HP QTP for only 3 months. My feeling is Boozang somehow has the similar design like that. And what is the big difference between Boozang and other record and playback tools like Cypress?
Well, Cypress, I would actually say, is we're more similar to Cypress than like a QTP or something like that. Yep. Cypress isn't necessarily a record and replay tool. I think when you're using Cypress, I think it requires you, for instance, the weights and everything in Cypress, you got to be a little bit of a developer to understand that syntax and write it well. I think we are more an end-to-end solution. There is a way to do Boozang testing, and you do it our way, but then you get so much more for it. While Cypress is a little more developer-centric, it's powerful, but you don't get as much out of the box. Compared to HP QTP or something like this, I mean, the desktop tools here, they're a little bit legacy. They're not so web focused. I think you want to go with more of a legacy tool. If you're doing combination testing, you need to do desktop testing and web testing. Then you go with one of those players. Otherwise, if you're doing pure web testing, it's better to go with the more modern. So that would be us, Cypress, or one of our competitors. Like more modern approach to web testing would probably be better. Because also, in all fairness, there's much more. I think we're moving faster, right? We are really about the next 5 years, not supporting 20 years of existing customers. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Nice. Someone had a quick question here. They wanted to know, they missed the beginning. Is this a free tool? Is it a paid tool? What's the model?
So the model is free until you use it commercially, right? So it's free for you to play around with. So that's basically 1,000 actions per month. And then we just monitor the actions. It's a soft limit. And then we'll see if you start using the tool a lot, we'll just cap your usage. And then the idea is that it's a seat-based model. So I can show you, it's very straightforward. Our pricing is basically probably mid-range to low compared to competition. Of course, we're not as expensive as one of these QTP or legacy tools or Ranorex or whatever. These are more expensive tools because we're a pure web tool. But if we look at it, the idea is basically there's 2 tiers. One is a startup tier, which gets you started around, you can see here, it's like $250 a month. So it's like $3,000 per year. And if you're more of an enterprise or you want to onboard the whole team, it's $800 per month. So it's pretty like with our competitors, we're probably on the low end of that.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Still in a similar tier.
Cool.
For sure, we're like, from what I understand, a tool that supports Cucumber and has that built in. Of course, we're definitely in the low end if you look at the functionality. But we're also a younger company, so I think that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I used to work for large enterprises, and that's nothing. So that's a good price point.
It gets crazy. Yeah, I know it gets crazy.
Right. Awesome. So, Mats, I'd love to talk to you for longer, but I want to respect everyone's time. We're a little bit over already. A lot of cool stuff. Folks don't know I interviewed Mats maybe a year ago, and they've done a lot of development, and they've done improvements. So you could tell that they're really dedicated to making this tool even better. So as you notice, there is a free to use before it's commercial, so there's no harm in downloading it and trying it yourself. So I highly recommend you do. And Mats, any parting words of wisdom you want to leave the guild?
Yeah, I think one thing I really want to say, and I think maybe I got lost on that point, and it's the fact that I don't think Cucumber was really, really hot a while back. I think Joe and a lot of people were talking about it. And I know companies have implemented it really successfully, but I think a lot of people got lost halfway because they were doing a lot of Cucumber, but then they were doing code like the Selenium part, and then they were just saying, this is just overhead. And what I think you're going to see is that you're going to see a really big return to Cucumber with codeless tools, because what this allows you to do, right, is having your business analyst just really getting into the nitty gritty and writing all these features. And then you'll have a tool that can actually do the automation fairly quickly. So you don't have to have everyone learning a tool or anything, but you can have everyone participating using natural language and Cucumber. And the codeless tools are going to get better and better at doing the automation just based on the Cucumber. So imagine that, right? What that means for the future of BDD and Cucumber. And I think this codeless and no code revolution is really going to change the landscape here. And that's at least what I'm predicting. So I don't know if I'm the first one to say it, but I really believe in a really strong return for Cucumber. I don't know, Joe, do you have a comment on that?
Well, like you said, I think it was up and then down, and like people really dogged it just because, like you said, they're not implementing it correctly. But if you get a codeless happening behind the scenes, I think you may be able to see a return. I don't know. I'm on the fence, but
on the fence,
you're right. Yeah,
you've been around, so you know.
That's right. Yeah. Awesome. So, Mats, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we see you next time at another Test Guild meetup or on a podcast, new episode update.
I hope so soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mats.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, so awesome session. Like I said, I'm sorry we went a little overtime, but like I said, a lot of cool new features here. Matt's really delivered. So hopefully if you want to see more from Matt's, let me know. Maybe we could put on another, I could try to get him to join us for another meetup, to maybe do API testing or performance testing would be cool. All right, so before we go, just a reminder, this edition of the Test Guild is sponsored by my Secure Guild conference. It's an online conference dedicated 100% to helping you succeed with security testing. It's happening October 19th to the 20th. If you are a tester and you're new to security or you want to expand your career, if you look at the outlook of security testing or analyst, it is sky high. So it only is going to help you in your career as a tester. And if you want to make a transition, it'll help you as well. Definitely check it out. And extra bonus, because you are a loyal guild, Test Guild Meetup member, you get $50 off by using the code down below, which is GuildCoinGuide50. So just click on that Register Now button if you're in the Test Guild Hall Meetup software, or if you're in YouTube, I put a link there as well. And if it's not there, I'll do it on the replay. And if you are registered, you will get a recording of this replay as well. And if you're subscribed on my YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe and hit that bell. You'll get an update once the recording is live there also. So, see you all next week. Next week, we're going over SAP API automation, a really cool tool. This is a technology a lot of people don't know about, and I think it's going to help you. So definitely stay tuned for next week also. And that's it for today. Thank you, everyone, for all your awesome questions. Thank you, Narendra. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Carlin, Kalyan, Javia, Sanjay, and Samia. And Gianni, thank you, Gianni. Gianni was asking a lot of questions and answering a lot of questions as well. So thank you all. See you next week. And as always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.